It's the Security Weekly News. Welcome to the week of 12 October 2025. I'm Doug Waite. It's autumn, Halloween. If you probably have a spirit store open in your basement already, even if you don't know it. The wind is blowing piles of rotting leaves and political garbage, and there appear to be some glowing eyes staring at me from out of the forest. When did I write this? I think I wrote this last night. Yeah, okay. It must have been dark. We got bikers, Apple, the Storm Gang, GitHub, EES, Salesforce, Aaran Leyland, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days, cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our Zero Trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots, just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/threatlocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. All right, I'm Doug White, and it's the Security Weekly News, where we will stay on the air until they force us off or the bar opens. One of those. Yeah, so either or. Apple announced a major expansion of their bug bounty program. I mean, they used to just say bugs. We don't have any bugs. I think you're talking about Microsoft, right? But yeah, but they do have a bug bounty program, and it actually launched in 2020, and it has awarded $35 million to about 800 people so far, which is about 44,000 on average. But a bunch of those, well, not a bunch, but some of those were these big awards, like $500,000 kind of things. The current highest reward has now been doubled for finding a zero-click remote compromise. And if you add all the bonuses to that, it could go to as high as much as $5 million if you could find one of those. They also had wireless proximity attacks will pay $1 million. A broad unauthorized iCloud access was $1 million, and WebKit exploit chains leading to unsigned arbitrary code execution was also $1 million. And it goes all the way down to like $1,000 for, which is called an encouragement award for like low impact but valid reports. I mean, I work for a university, so $1,000 is a lot of money for us. But, so hey, get out there, get cracking, win large sums of money from Apple, and donate some to me, right? And we all win. It's you can't lose. Speaking of universities, a group called Storm-657 is targeting university employees trying to get to their meager paychecks. I'm like, really? You're going to target university employees? Like, you can't find anybody better paid than that. But they are. Apparently, this particular campaign has been going on since about March of 2025. Now, I see tons of this stuff because I do have an email address that has a university.edu in the name, which means they're like, okay, this is one of our potential victims. And I get memos from the president, memos from the dean, memos from the provost. There are all these same kind of attacks that say I need to urgently open them. I get certified snail mail letters telling me I've been barred from campus, bar bills from the faculty lounge, and unpaid parking tickets, all of which I use to heat my cardboard box and the steam grate in the winter. Yeah, I'm not paying those parking ticket guys. I'm just telling you that right now. Yeah. But I have seen lots of these phishing attacks. So Microsoft Threat Intelligence found the campaign, and they said they were targeting primarily Workday accounts and possible other HR or software as a service platforms. I have no idea what my university uses for HR, software, but whatever they use, we do get targeted. There were 11 successfully compromised accounts that was in this particular report. And they said those 11 accounts at 3 universities were used to send phishing emails to 6,000 email accounts at 25 different universities. Now, some of these are, questions and, it's all this usual spear phishing stuff that they come up with. These had included warnings of disease outbreaks on campus, so that scares everybody. Um, Unless it's scabies, we're pretty used to that kind of stuff. But faculty misconduct warnings, compensation warnings, etc. Some of them are signed by the president. Some of them are signed by other university officials or by HR. And in the latest one, they used an adversary in the middle link to steal the multi-factor authentication code, which allowed them to get into the person's exchange online. And that, of course, lets them then send further emails using those accounts and on and on and on. I think one of the best ones I ever got was it was literally from the email account, which we all know is easy to do. The email account of the president of the university, and it advised me that a 25% pay cut was being given to some faculty and layoffs given to other faculty effective the next day. And please check the list to see if you have been laid off or if you're receiving a pay cut. And this was sent to a lot of people at that institution. I could see a lot of people clicking on that. And, of course, faculty start a rumor, watch the flames rise, right? I mean, like post on the university bulletin board that they're going to cut the English department to pay for a new wiffle ball stadium since we aren't in England. Why are we teaching English? Teach American, damn it. Sorry, I think this was more of a problem in Florida, but anyway, warn your people about things like this, even if they're not university employees, because these kind of spear phishing attacks are very scary. They show up constantly, and a lot of people will seemingly click them, which is why they're doing them, right? Attackers were seen abusing Internet Explorer in the Edge browser in an alley off 109th Street. Poor Edge. Always the installer, never the installed. Although I guess it's always installed, right? But it wants to be your friend, but it's not. And now I'd even like when you try to install Brave or Chrome or something else, it's just like, why not use Edge? I'm better than those. Like, nope, not going to do it. The more you tell me I have to do this, the more I'm not going to do it. I hate fighting with Edge. They're constantly trying to get me to, make this my default browser. It's like a pop-up starts playing and it's playing In the Arms of the Angel with pictures of sad dying pets, that didn't have Edge. Click here to stop the song. And in small print, make Edge your pet's default browser. I mean, we've all dealt with this, right? I mean, and you can't uninstall it. You can, but it's really hard, and it's probably going to reinstall the minute you do an update. But anyway, in this particular case, abusing the Internet Explorer components inside of Edge allowed someone to access the user's device. Now, they had to use social engineering, of course, to get you to actually go along with this, but they also used unpatched 0 days in the Chakra engine, which is the JavaScript component of it. And that Chakra engine allowed access to devices back in August. They did have to get you to go to their very official looking fake website and have you click an option to reload the page in Internet Explorer. And once that happened, the Chakra exploit allowed remote code execution so they could take over your device. There's a couple of things here that people need to be thinking about. I mean, always about reducing attack surface, right? So not allowing, if you do have Edge, and you do, whether you want it or not, don't allow it to execute this in the Internet Explorer option, because that has the potential for them to do this kind of stuff. So you need to be restricting Internet Explorer mode, completely. But, wouldn't it be nice if you could just uninstall Edge altogether? Since we're not using it and almost nobody uses it. Yeah, I mean, that would be a threat surface reduction right there. It's like trying to get rid of Clippy the paperclip. Remember that stupid thing? Oh, you can try, but the minute it updates, Clippy's right back there on your desktop again. In fact, I get the shakes if I just see if I see a paperclip, it looks like this. All my paper clips look like this because they're always unbent because I used them to remove SIM cards or reset a router or something. So if I do find one, I have to straighten it out, but I have PTSD from Clippy, the paperclip helper. I love GitHub. I think we all do, but it is a lot like the old BBS systems that we used to use, and these are, and of course, GitHub is like a BBS system on a massive dose of rabid bull testosterone steroid mix. I mean, compared to those old systems. But, just like people downloading that old StarTrek.com file and running it on their Tandy 1000 and having it wipe their hard drive, public repositories can be very dangerous. In and of themselves, they're a huge threat canvas. On that crowded subway platform at the Port Authority, you can catch impetigo, ringworm, scabies, maybe leprosy on a good day. At very least, you can get drooled on by somebody. But public repositories are just infected bug houses of problems waiting to happen. So, you need to get up to 108th Avenue. So you stand there scratching and watching that man appears to have something living in his clothes till the train arrives, just like you use GitHub all the time. So McAfee Threat Research reported that Astaroth has a new campaign that is using GitHub repositories to host malware and their configurations instead of using command and control servers because it's a lot harder to identify them on GitHub. Astaroth, if you don't know what it is a fileless Trojan which steals credentials and then injects those credentials into banking sites on your device to try to take over your bank account. It usually starts with a phishing attack, like so many things. But if your system is blocking connections, from your users or your endpoints, you're trying to go to a weird IP in North Korea, it might not block a connection to GitHub, which you may have allowed to be open because people need to get to GitHub. So, unfortunately, security maybe means you can't get to GitHub anymore. It makes sense to me in terms of an attack. Put all your sources somewhere we see a lot of traffic and it's lost in the noise and it's allowed and that site may be allowed. It's like running if you're running port scans and you run them on port 80 or you try to connect to servers on port 80 or port 123 even, those are often open. Like, port 53 UDP is open everywhere. Nobody ever hardly blocks or restricts that, even though they should. So you might want to consider how you limit threat surfaces on all these repositories that we love. I love PyPy, I love GitHub, all NPM, but they're all vulnerable to this kind of an attack. So did you trust any of them today? Did you just download something? Did you download Markovify this morning? Like, no way. Well, as we see more border crossings going virtual or or whatever, the traditional joy of standing in a customs line for 4 hours after your 17-hour flight where the toilet stopped working in hour 14 and they handed out paper cups in case you needed to go badly without instructions for what to do with the cups when you're done. And then some human agent is talking to Tyra Banks with the other agents and no one is getting their little passport stamp. And then they ask you why they didn't stamp the correct page of your passport in Slovakia. And you say, I have no idea. I don't even speak Slovakian. And then they spend even more time asking you why you were in Slovakia and telling you how they could deny you entry to the United States because it's supposed to be stamped on the correct page. And you say, okay, what do I do now? And then they just wave you through. I was like, okay, do I have to go back to Slovakia and tell the person they have to stamp the right page? And then they just wave you through. Well, when I was in Mexico City recently, they had this auto scanner. You just put your passport on a scanner and this little gate opened. I was like, wow, that was easy. But then it printed out this dire ticket, which at the very top of it in Spanish said, do not lose this or you will not be allowed to leave the country. I was like, that's a weird threat. Like, if you lose this, you're not going to be allowed to leave the country. The problem was it then proceeded. I had to translate all this. It proceeded to say, you must go to the following website. And then the ink just smeared the rest of the page. I couldn't tell what the website was. When I went to leave Mexico City at the airport, I thought, well, I'm going to be living in Mexico City forever, which wouldn't be that bad, mind you, because I like Mexico City. But when I went, they were like, oh, yeah, you don't need that anymore. It's been phased out. But anyway, the EU has been rolling out a biometric entry-exit system called EES for non-EU passport holders, but it doesn't always work. So this is all part of a new thing where they charge you 20 euros for 3 years to come into the Schengen countries, as they're called, which are all these EU countries that agree that you don't have to cross borders inside. Now, apparently in Prague, when they debuted this thing, it totally tanked and it resulted in very, very long lines of people having to go be processed through this. So basically, if you don't have an EU passport, you're going to have to give up a fingerprint before you get to see the passport control guys, along with your facial biometrics and other information. So the Schengen countries are rolling this out between now and next March. So you will get a chance to do it. But the new rules require anyone over 11 years old to provide fingerprints, facial biometrics, and passport information upon arrival at the EU. This is a 3-year visa, and you get to pay the handy dandy 20 euro fee. So, won't some nice European country claim me and give me an EU passport? Austria, Ireland, come on, I'm thinking of you. Even Germany, I've got a direct German ancestor. Come on, like please take me back. All right. Scattered lapsuses. I don't know how to say it. Nobody knows how to say it. Scattered lapsuses hunters. It's lapsus with a dollar sign. We're familiar with this. They said they would release a lot of Salesforce records if the customers who got compromised did not pay. Salesforce and a bunch of the customers said nuts. So they released millions of records. Mind you, General McAuliffe, who was the original person who said nuts, but General McAuliffe and I would both tell you that you shouldn't pay ransoms or surrender in Bastogne on a Friday in December. But sometimes actions have consequences. The unpronounceable scattered lapsuses hunters are an offshoot of the unpronounceable lapsuses, and Scattered Spider and Shiny Hunters, all of whom were involved and claimed they stole all this data from 39 Salesforce customers. And of course, these were not just like customers like Steve from Akron. No, they were like Disney and Bank of America and Qantas and all that. Qantas said that possibly 6 million of their customers were affected. Have I Been Pwned said that 7.3 million Vietnam Airlines accounts were leaked. I think I'm in every one of these, even Vietnam Airlines. It was great. I flew from Ho Chi Minh City at like 6 in the morning to Nha Trang, and they landed in another city. They I don't know why they said the airport was closed in Nha Trang, and we landed in a different city. And conveniently, the pilot's relatives were there waiting to drive us for a low price to Nha Trang. It was fun to see the countryside, though. So anyway, you may want to check, if you have got breaches on you from all this. Databreaches.net said that the ransomware group said some victims paid the ransom, and it is unclear why only 6 of the victims have had data leaks so far. But, regardless of all that, use multi-factor, use different username passwords on every site and so forth, and don't take any wooden nickels or click on any phishing emails. Yeah, it's basically all this one big threat now. All right, I saw this story and I literally was like, yay, somebody. I told people this so many times. The headline says, cyber attack contingency plans should be put on paper, firms told. And it should have said told by Doug White more than once. But this warning came from the NCSC, or the National Cybersecurity Center in the UK. So look, when your whole workflow and your whole plan and your whole response is on a hard disk in the computing center, even if it's a shared hard disk, and the computing center is now under 2 meters of salt water, who do you call first? I mean, I saw this a couple of times where the smiling CIO said, look at this fancy incident response system we just spent a lot of money on. It's running on this terminal with color graphics in our center. And I said, now assume the center is a smoking pile of rubble. What's your first move? And everything was always in that, like, well, first you go to the incident menu. And I'm like, no, the incident menu no longer is available. It's got a ransomware banner on it. So, I mean, at the very least, have some kind of out of band, meaning somewhere off site that's out of the weather band, even, because I'm like hurricanes, typhoons, tsunamis, all this kind of stuff, earthquakes, dark of night. I don't know, but somewhere out of that band, maybe a muster center with a backup plan that's sitting in a locked briefcase in the center of a concrete storage unit in Dallas with a spotlight on it. I mean, that's a cheap solution, but it would work for this. When all else fails, there's an 8x10 storage building 2 hours away from here with a locked filing cabinet sitting under a single bright spotlight in unit number 42 at Rick's store et al. So when our building's underwater, you can jump in the off-site van, drive there, retrieve the plan with all the numbers that we just updated each month, and we're back in business. You did update all those numbers this month, right? Because, remember Stanley retired. Yeah. But I mean, I don't care where you put it, as long as it's accessible and it's out of band, and it needs to be accessible within your time horizon. It can be at the CFO's house in the Poconos, but you need to test getting there in the winter, like with snow on the roads and a blizzard going on. And, how do you get there? How long does it take? How quickly can you get back in business? And you may need this. And you really should be assuming you're not going to be able to log into the servers because you got ransomware, or the building got hit with falling space junk, and your backup tapes are all at the bottom of a pit. Think about that. Speaking of things falling out of the sky and space junk and all that, it's Aaran Leyland. Hi, Aaron.
I am definitely space junk.
I'll keep you in that category for now.
Okay. You can decide on a new category at the end, and it's probably going to be space junk that's been knocked out of the sky by a Chinese missile and is coming crashing down into the space.
I keep expecting to have you log in one day and there's just sort of a Chinese flag where your face used to be.
Well, after this news piece, that's probably going to happen. So I'm going to get rolling right into this because I've written far too many words today. So it's all going to go crazy. But firstly, thank you to all the recent comments on YouTube. We will answer them, especially episode 518. And Doug does have great hair. Or did you mean my hair or both our hairs? Who knows? We'll get to it. Okay, let's pick up where we left off on Russia and move east, because apparently, and Doug knows it, I'm trying to cancel myself. And after that, I might move to Iran and North Korea, because apparently I do not value my life. But anyway, they might be preoccupied with sanctions and not care about the itty-bitty number 2 cybersecurity podcast on Spotify. And I can't find that. Sam, when you come back, I need that. People keep asking me about it. I've lost it. Number 2 on Spotify. But anyway, before we start, I was on LinkedIn yesterday and it drives me insane. And I was laughing at Marcus Hutchins. Who remembers who Marcus Hutchins is? Is he even relevant anymore? But there was a moment of inspiration. So China, Iran, North Korea, Russia. I've made up a name because everybody else is, and I've decided to call them the Core 4, spelled CORE, figure 4. Wait for it. The coalition of rogue entities even. I ruined that, didn't I? 4. And look, if there's another country, you can just make it 5. How clever is that, right? Fancy. Anyway, before I lose it altogether, let's get back to China, which is much bigger, broader, and far more structural than Russia. Because, hey, to be honest, Russia thought they were a superpower, want to be a superpower, can't even get a third of the way into Ukraine. Okay, back to China. Must be clear. It's like, and I'm going to stop my super humor. Okay, China. I won't say it the way the El Presidente says it because it's just insane, isn't it? Okay, this is sustained, coordinated, and economically intertwined with how the West actually functions. Chinese state operations, the Ministry of State Security and its regional bureaus, vast contractual model, discussed it many times. Silk Typhoon, also covered that many times. Also covered, they aren't freelancers, they're commercial fronts built for scale. So they've turned espionage into a service economy, patenting offensive tools, training staff, and billing the state for compromises. We've talked about that before, but we're going to move on from that. So the US Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and its Five Eyes partners, you all know who they are, have warned repeatedly that Beijing's focus is on pre-positioning. Groups like Vault Typhoon have been discovered sitting quietly inside networks that run communications, water, and power across the United States. Not stealing data this time, because that's something else. We'll go into that. But learning how the systems operate, that is preparation for disruption, not espionage. It's military posture in digital form. And make no mistake, this is hybrid warfare. So China is shaping the battlefield years in advance, embedding itself inside infrastructure that underpins Western economies and holding strategic leverage through dependency on Chinese hardware. It's all been on the news. We're going to get into it. Software and, of course, the big news at the minute, raw materials. Almost every piece of Western renewable or defense tech depends on Chinese rare earth processing. 90% of the world's magnets and refined rare earths are processed in China. Without them, you won't build turbines, electric vehicles, or missile guidance systems as they're coming for me to blow me out of the sky and land up in the Pacific, right? Hot topic. So basically, this is hard power in a trade form, and it honestly feels like they've got us over a barrel, like doing stuff to us, doesn't it? So back to the cyber front, Beijing's playbook has evolved. They no longer rely on burning 0 days. That's where that Marcus Hutchins post came on the other day. Anyway, unless it's essential, most of their activities now use legitimate credentials, living off the land binaries and long-term persistence through supply chains and cloud providers. So when they do use exploits, the high collateral stuff is calculated. Think Barracuda, Avante, and Exchange. But the point is endurance, not noise. And as we know, all of us, 0 days are strategic equity. You don't waste them when you can walk through the front door with an unmonitored account. The US and me, your allied forces over here in London, are seeing a total uptake in active targeting, especially obviously in semiconductor and AI sectors. Taiwan, dare I say it, remains the epicenter of that interest. TSMC, responsible for almost 90% of the world's advanced chip production, isn't just a corporate asset, it's a geopolitical one. The US military posture, dare I say it before I get cancelled, around Taiwan is as much about chips as it is about democracy. And that's not chips and crisps debate in the UK. That's the special ones that are worth lots of money and teeny tiny. So if Beijing were to move on Taiwan, the economic shockwave would ellipse anything we've seen in modern history, not just for supply chains, but for AI, defense, and critical infrastructure. Look, I've talked about this before. Chinese theft of intellectual property continues practically unchecked, from defense designs to pharmaceutical IP and quantum computing research. The US Department of Justice and US NCSC have both called out named operations APT 31, APT 40, half name. Look, it's just the Chinese government in it. Look, they say directly linked to state entities. I say the Chinese government, whatever. The indictment details are unambiguous. That's where we live. Corporate espionage disguised as R&D collaboration, backed by the MSS and the Ministry of Public Security. Okay, right. Let's go into who's in trouble, right? Critical infrastructure and their 3-tier suppliers, the small water companies, the local power subcontractor, and the small port IT provider. Secondly, managed service providers and identity platforms, because if you own the IAM stack, well, you own everyone downstream, right? And third, of course, innovation economy, semiconductors, AI, biotech, defense research, and universities. They're all over the UK universities, literally totally infiltrated, isn't it? Okay, strategic value, right? So think about disruption, forget compliance. You need to act like the adversary. And I'm going to bang through these quickly. And these first two, you're just going to know, right? Rotate and isolate your edge. Treat every VPN, router, and legacy firewall as a probable compromise point. If it's end of life, remove it, no exceptions. Second, invert your identity model. Know exactly who has persistent admin rights. Enforce phishing-resistant MFA for every privileged account. And audit identity federation continuously. Look, most of it starts with stolen or misused credentials. Third, and the most important, because I know you've been doing the other two, as BAU, build tripwires for quiet paths, deploy canary credentials, honey accounts, and deceptive admin endpoints. That will save you. Look for stuff that doesn't make sense, right? That's where they hide, not in malware. They want to blend into your daily operations. Look, strategically, the West hasn't adjusted to the scale of what China's doing. National strategies in the US, UK, and EU are lagging behind. We're refreshing frameworks while they're pre-positioning an infrastructure that will take a generation to unwind. It really will. China's approach isn't about turning off the lights today. It's about ensuring when a crisis comes, likely centered around Taiwan, they can decide whose lights go out and when. Look, top draw strategic leverage of the scariest kind. I totally think the trajectory is clear. Hybrid pressure will intensify. Direct conflict is still unlikely in the next 2 to 3 years, but hey, who knows when there's people with hot heads about. But escalation around Taiwan will continue. Blockade sanctions or law enforcement actions is becoming plausible. Cyber will be the opening act. Expect simultaneous economic and digital disruption, not a single event. China, is already inside the wire, isn't it? Yes, they are. So we need to make it too costly for them to be all over us. Hey, anyway, back to Dr. Doug. I was going to say back to Cyber Doug in the comedy community. Anyway, Doug, you can be in my Core 4 or Core 5 or Core other number.
I want to be Cyber Doug. I think that's good. I like that.
I want you to be Cyber Doug.
谢谢, Aaron. All right. So I was wondering when we would get to this point in history, a blue screen of death when you stopped at that light in front of the biker bar. You know, I mean, I know I drove an MGB, like a 1977 MGB, and it didn't have a blue screen of death, but it did like to stop running in front of biker bars or other threatening situations. And, you know, you're trying to push that secret button that was in the trunk that nobody knew where it came from, but it sometimes made the car start, and your date is saying they're coming over. And you basically figure, well, it's been fun, but you might want to save yourself. And then a guy with a lot of tattoos and scars, smoking a Marlboro Red with chains clinking and carrying a Lone Star tall boy says, "Did you check the plugs?" And you're like, oh, what does that mean? But anyway, today, a whole new set of problems. Pretty soon, your car is going to ask you when you hit the high beams, would you like to set Edge as your default browser now? Or, you know, would you like to skip this and go onto the Edge install menu? But Jeep Wrangler 4xe hybrids got an over-the-air software update this weekend for their infotainment system. It's a Jeep with an infotainment system. Yeah. But that's not how I imagine a Jeep. But anyway, it caused the vehicles to not just blue screen of death, but they lost power while they were driving. And then they slowly kept losing power until they just stopped. I guess that was a safety feature. So like the car doesn't just slam into park on the freeway. It didn't just brick the whole thing at 125 kph, but it did a very MGB thing. It just sort of started fading away, and then it stopped and it wouldn't start again in front of a biker bar. So maybe be careful with the updates, car companies. You know, I mean, I really hate the idea that my car is going to die in front of a non-friendly biker bar, or they saw you talking to the other biker bar, or you're at a stoplight on Amsterdam Avenue where you've suddenly, like, all the squeegee bums come. Like the squeegee bums used to come after my car, and you know, I will take bikers over squeegee bums any day. I mean, they're a lot nicer. But anyway, that is the news. Thank you, Aaron, and we will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.